Cinematic VR Crash Course.
Welcome back. Now that you know what kind of cameras are out there, I would like to help you in this lesson with making the right decisions and choosing the best workflow for you. Given the amount of different cameras out there, we'll have to keep this quite a general lesson, since we don't want to dive into one specific workflow. I do hope this lesson will give you enough insights to make a choice for yourself and get to know which workflow suits which type of production. I haven't tried all the different cameras and their workflows, so please get out in the field, do your research, keep on testing and talk to people who've been shooting with the cameras you'd like to use. This is the only way to find the right camera and workflow for the job. If you want to know more about a workflow concerning a specific camera, I recommend you to look in the hardware documentation sheet attached to this lesson. It's a complete list of 360 cameras with their features, so you can quickly compare which camera will suit your production. By clicking a camera, you'll be redirected to the company's website where you can find all the information that you need. Let's go! Let me start by telling you that there is no 360 video camera that is perfect. There is the right camera for the right job though. Sometimes this translates itself into a simple GoPro rig, and sometimes this is a complicated and high-end custom RED system. Before you start shooting, it's a good idea to write down what your minimum needs are in order to deliver a production to your satisfaction. You probably have a good idea or concept that you want to work out into a breathtaking 360 video. For now though, we're gonna use the following concept as an example. An experience about nature's beauty and the impact humans have on the environment. The opening is an aerial shot which will take the viewer over mountains and waterfalls. Birds are flying next to us with clouds rolling over us. Sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? But how in the heck are we going to capture all this? If we break down such a concept, 4 questions immediately arise in my mind. In what kind of an environment are we shooting? What actions are happening on screen? What is the goal we would like to achieve? And how are we going to actually create it in post-production? With these questions, we're going to narrow down our options. They will give us insights on which specifications we'll need for our camera. Before we're going to answer these questions, we first need to know what these specifications mean. You'll often see things like frame rate, resolution, ISO, and F. I'll just go through these quickly. Frame rate. Frame rate expressed in frames per second or FPS is the frequency rate at which consecutive images called frames appear on a display. The higher the FPS, the smoother your image will look. Most of the 360 cameras offer recording in 30 FPS, but preferably you'd like to shoot in a higher frame rate for virtual reality. Lower frame rate videos can cause nausea and decrease the effect of presence. Resolution. It's the amount of pixels apparent in your image. When watching a stereo 360 video in a VR headset, you want to have at least a resolution of 3840 by 2160 pixels. This is something to keep in mind. You'll need your camera to output a high resolution. ISO. ISO stands for International Standards Organization, and it's a standardized industry scale for measuring sensitivity to light. This can be used in relation to how sensitive camera film is to light, but more commonly for 360 cameras, it pertains to the sensitivity of a digital image sensor. You can use ISO on your camera to increase the sensitivity of the sensor, but with a higher ISO number also comes reduction of your image quality. Your image will look noisy with a high ISO value. F is the symbol for aperture. If you don't know what aperture is, please go to this link and you'll find out. Aperture and focus are almost always taken care of automatically by 360 cameras. The effect of the amount of f-stops or the number that is related to the aperture also greatly depends on the size of the sensor, so I wouldn't stare at the f number too much when deciding on camera. Now that is clear, let's go on and answer our questions. First, the environment. In what kind of an environment are we shooting? Your environment is probably the most tricky and at the same time the most important for the choice of your camera. What is the light like where we are going to shoot? Is it outside or in a closed environment? Do we have control over the lights and objects around us? How big is the space we're shooting in? All questions that will affect the choice of our camera. If our camera isn't capable of shooting in the required conditions, we need to adjust either the environment or replace it for a camera that is capable. Remember that the camera will capture the whole environment, also the things you'd maybe not want to have in your video. If you plan and produce your production carefully, you should be able to work around a lot of hurdles you will encounter, and trust me, you will get into problems sooner or later. If we take our initial concept, the environment will be outside, flying through the air with a grey sky. We won't have any influence on our scene or lighting, so this means we'd preferably have a camera on which we can adjust our lighting settings on the fly. Actions. What is going to happen on screen, and what does this mean for our camera choice? If we have actors in our scene, we'll probably want to direct them and review their effort. If you're filming a crowd or a busy place, your camera will raise eyebrows and people will come up close and ignore all the rules we normally preach. If there's fast movement in your scenes, either by objects or by the camera itself, you need to think about how this will affect the stitching quality and frame rate you'll have to use. With camera movement also comes the question how to rig the camera and what effect this has on our choice. Our concept says that the camera has to be flying and birds are flying by. We'll probably rig it to a drone, so we have to think about size and weight. To capture the high movement of the birds smoothly, we need to record in high frame rate. Goal. What do you want to achieve by showing your viewers this scene? What emotions should this scene evoke and what kind of perspective are you using? With determining the goal of your production, you can also get more insights in planning and budget. Very interesting and important questions that will have a big influence of your choice of camera. Not merely because the look and feel of a production starts with the gear you're using, but mostly because you now have a better view on how flexible your crew has to be. The goal of our concept is in the first place entertainment. We're trying to show the viewer the amazing beauty of our planet. Besides that, we're trying to show the audience that these places are in danger and we have to take actions to prevent it from disappearing. In order to achieve this goal, we need a very flexible and durable workflow capable of delivering and reviewing high-end cinematic images. We don't necessarily need the 3D effect in our images, since we are going to show a lot of distant views, and the 3D effect is only visible on objects close to our camera. Alright, so now we've broken down the concept, we have a much better view on what our needs are. Let's go through them. The camera has to be lightweight, it has to record in high resolution, at least UHD, it has to record in high frame rate, we have normal lighting conditions, not necessarily need to capture stereoscopic 3D, we need a workflow in which we can review our footage quickly, our workflow should be able to perform in the field. If we take a look in the hardware documentation sheet, we'll quickly see that a lot of cameras don't match our needs. Please note that the 360 cameras market is moving quickly, and this sheet can get outdated fairly quickly. I will try to update every now and then, but always consider to research the internet for other options and workflows. Go ahead and try to break down your own concept in order to find what you're looking for. Also, please leave a comment if you're missing any information on the hardware documentation sheet. Post-production. After you've picked your camera, it's time to think about your post-production workflow. It is important to think ahead because you could solve a lot of post-production issues just by thinking of the hurdles you are encountering. It starts with stitching. Does the camera come with dedicated stitching software? And how are those results? If not, how am I going to stitch it? And are there any examples out there of people who've done the same? In what kind of codec does the camera shoot and how will this affect my further actions? Later on in the editing lesson, we'll talk more about codecs. Do we need to stabilize the footage and how? Are there a lot of visual effects we need to add and which camera supports handy tools like depth maps? These and lots of other post-production workflow questions can create new requirements and help to identify the most suitable camera for the job. To summarize, there is no perfect 360 camera, but the right camera for the right job. Use the hardware documentation sheet if you want to know about a specific camera. Break down concepts with simple questions to find your requirements. Use these requirements to narrow down the list of possible cameras. Research the different options to get a better view of which suits you best. Think of how you are actually going to create it in post-production. So, when it comes to picking the right gear for the right job, try to visualize all the hurdles you're encountering and keep the balance between specifications, workflow on set and in post-production. So when it comes to picking the right gear for the right job, try to visualize all the hurdles you're encountering and keep the balance between specifications, workflow on set and in post-production, and of course the desired goal you're trying to reach. Now we've made our decision based on our needs, we'll go and prepare our shoot. 360 cameras have certain limitations, which have to be taken into account when filming. For example, how are you gonna light your scene without obvious light showing? And where are you as a cameraman gonna hide? That's why scripting, planning and rehearsing your shoot beforehand is a really good idea. We'll cover this in depth in the upcoming lesson.